So there it is, our first one. That's agenda. Thank you very much to Graham Jelly, Graham Pryke, colleagues at Essex Cricket, for the work they've done, and they'll explain exactly what has been achieved and what we can look forward to. But I must pay tribute to the work that they've done and really put Essex at #1 in terms of obtaining the funding. So thank you very much, guys, for that. And as I say, we'll spend about 20 minutes going through this, and I think Giles will start us off by talking about this first slide.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. What we're going to do is just give you an overall view of the sort of money that's come into cricket in Essex during the lockdown period. The first one you've got here is over 1,200,000. This is the government grant, came by local authorities, maximum 10,000 in the majority of cases for those clubs that have rateable value paid rates. Pretty successful. Not all councils were as forthcoming as others, but quite a large chunk of money, which has helped a lot of clubs along the way. Okay, Phil. The next slide is the rest of the funding that has come into Essex. The Sporting and Emergency Grant, which I think a lot of people went for fairly early on. As you can see, 232,500. I think initially it was more for clubs that were struggling and couldn't raise money anywhere else. But nonetheless, nearly £250,000 there from that Sporting and Emergency Grant. The interest-free ECB loan scheme, that's not the generic one, that was one for this particular problem we had. Only taken up at the moment, there's a couple in process, but only taken up for 4,200. And junior clubs, clubs with juniors could have the loan for up between 1,000 and 50 grand, and adults only 1,000 and 20 grand.
So, just going to let somebody in.
All right.
Otherwise, I'm going to. Sorry. Okay, good.
Next one, Phil.
Yep.
Right. Okay. This is the one that we're very proud of, really. The ECB returned to cricket grant, which is the maximum £3,000. This is probably out of date now because this was done the end of last week. But so far, 156 recipients, £423,000. That was in the main. That was clubs, few leagues, and a couple of the local district associations. The criteria was amended halfway through to include money towards COVID works and for end of season works. That's still open. It's open until the 15th of January, and at the end of the presentation we just have a reminder for you all about what you need to do to access it. There was some money for down in mainly in London on the River Roding Plain, the Sport England flood relief funding, which was 38,300, and East funding, which is the Essex and Southend Sports Trust, 14 clubs totaling 12,700. We've nearly run out of money on that, but we're hoping for more next year. And finally, this is a figure that probably could be a lot higher, but clubs have done a lot of work themselves. And so far as we're aware, around about 55,000 has been raised by clubs themselves, but I'm sure there's more there than that, which gives a grand total so far of 2,025,800 that's come into Essex Cricket. So thanks to everybody, thanks to Graham and Arfan, who did a lot of work on the clubs while I was on furlough, which I am again next week for the month. And thanks to clubs and everybody else concerned. Over to you, Pryke.
Thanks very much, Graham. I really want to cover, if you go to the next slide, Phil, please.
Yeah,
where we're going to be in 2021. I'm sure, we hope that we're out there playing cricket, and our job this year, to a certain extent, was to make sure that at least financially, clubs were still in a position to cover their essential maintenance bills, items that they had no control over, their ground preparation, etc., so that they were in a position to play cricket. Now we've got to get through the winter, and I guess for a lot of people, they'll be wondering if there's still going to be funding out there. There's clearly a lot of pressure in a lot of areas financially. Are you going to be able to go to your sponsors and still expect them to pay up? How many members are still in a position to keep paying their annual subs? A lot of questions for club committees to work on this winter. I just want to reassure you that I still believe there's a lot of funds out there. And certainly when Gels comes back from his next holiday, he's got a month off. And Arfan and myself are very, very keen to still work with clubs. If you've got projects, if you've got ambitions to improve your club, there are very many sources to look at. I've listed a few here that I'm always happy to share with people. If you're good at shorthand, you can scribble them down. Always come back to me. Graham's already touched on the East Fund. It's a small pot of money. We don't have a lot. We've always reminded clubs that if you've been lucky enough to receive a grant from that, we really would prefer to go to a new club. We don't want to just be repeating that. It's a fund that can go towards mowers, rollers, essential items that perhaps are not always covered by some of the other funds that are out there. You have to match the funding from one way or other, but it's a nice little source of funding if you've got a little project out there. We are still very much looking at our local authorities for all these housing developments at the 106 money, or whatever name they choose to give it. We think it's very important that cricket gets its share of money that comes in via that. So again, if you're aware of property developments in your area, especially if they're under 300 houses, where we don't always get to know about it, do let us know. There could be a significant amount of money available. Landfill companies, a lot of these I've mentioned many, many times before. Veolia and Biffa, depending on where you are in the county, tend to run these landfill sites, and they are always switching when they want to support cricket, etc., but always worth exploring. It's a very easy way of finding out whether you're actually eligible, because when you go on their website, they straight away ask for the postcode of your ground, and they will tell you immediately whether you're close enough to qualify. And if you are, you get to carry on. Unfortunately, if you're not, then you can't. Sport England have brought out a new fund. We believe at the moment, and we're still looking through the finer detail, but it's much more in the deprived areas. And however you feel about where you live, there are very few of those in rural Essex particularly. Some of our London boroughs might be able to attract the funding. But again, by all means, explore it. If you have some success, I always say just get the money first, then come and share it with us. And then we'll be able to get the message out to other clubs. But certainly worth having a look at. For the rural clubs, again, Essex County Council have a great fund called the Community Initiative Fund, funding somewhere sometimes between £5,000–10,000. Great source of funding for clubs, net projects, extra pitches or non-turf, that sort of area where it's a little bit more expensive for your club. It can give you a really good kickstart. I'm just going to touch on a few of the areas that I'm sure all of you love to do, and whether we're able to next year, but just personal sort of club funding ideas like quizzes, golf days, fun days, 100 clubs. And I think if nothing else, this whole event this summer, probably something that a lot of clubs have done before, but if you are thinking of raising money or you need to, I think this summer has definitely proved that it's great to support another charity alongside. If you support the NHS or some other local charity, it has a massive impact for you. And, hopefully you're doing it for the right reasons, but it can certainly enhance your ability to raise money if you're raising it for a great cause to share with. ECB, we have no idea at the moment where we're going to be financially next year. Many of you will have seen the headlines that sadly a lot of the staff are losing their positions at the moment. There's obviously a lot of losses made through the lack of supporters, the lack of proper, well, we had a test series, but we didn't have fans, and it cost a lot to put on with all the COVID. So please don't bank on the usual sort of round of money coming out. It'll be lovely if they do find some money out there, but we're not that optimistic at the moment. One area that was another little source, it's not big ticket, but I think anyone I've spoken to about NatWest Cricket Force last year said what a great idea to sort of send everyone the emergency packs, which seemed to arrive pretty much by and large in good time. So there were hand sanitizers, gels, masks, and various other bits and pieces. So again, whether they'll do the same next year, I don't know. But if your club didn't sign up for NatWest Cricket Force, I've no idea why not. But make sure you do when it comes around, because it's an easy way, and it saved a lot of clubs having to go out finding the equipment that they were going to need to play cricket last year. Other funds that I always say to people are areas like the Round Table, Lions clubs, Tesco's, Waitrose, Co-op, all have those token schemes. Always worth getting to meet and get into those sort of companies. And another one that I'm pretty sure a lot of clubs have got, but have got juniors, is the Jack Petchey Foundation. 21 years old now, and one of the richest men, still going. He's well into his 90s now, Sir Jack, but always giving away money. And it's actually a great scheme because it really encourages you to support and reward youngsters who don't necessarily have to perform brilliantly, just do something good on the pitch, and then they get to choose how they spend their prize within your club. So it's quite a nice way of sort of supporting cricket. So that's not an exclusive list. It's a list I put together for today. A reminder, as always, we'll come back to it, but the ECB always has its loan scheme. And it's sometimes easier than having to go to your members for a source of funding. It's also a great way to actually put a deposit down on a project. You don't even necessarily need to draw that loan down. But if you've got a sizable project, say for 40, 50,000 pounds, if you take out a loan for 15, 20 grand, you can immediately go out to a supporter and say, look, we've already got sort of guaranteed 50% funding, and gives your project some sort of legs to get moving. Admittedly, if you take it out, yes, you've got to pay that back. And I fully understand that. It's not going to be for everyone. You've got to be in a position to repay that, maybe through bar income or a good membership where you can use your subs and things like that. But it's supported many, many clubs over the years just to help them get over the line with a scheme. And it is still there and definitely not going away. So that's me on that bit. Giles, I think it's back to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I mean, it's extraordinary the amount of money you've got. So yeah, good. But Giles.
Right, now I don't know how many Club Mark clubs we have here tonight. This will eventually affect all clubs, but really we just deal with Club Mark clubs. As you know, there was no reaccreditation or annual health check this year because of the situation. Club Mark, we assume, it's all a bit up in the air, but will resume next year. It will be a slightly simplified and reduced Club Mark with more scope for clubs to put comments down. There'll still be the general areas of welfare and development and so on. But sitting underneath Club Mark next year is something called the Safe Hands Management System. Now, this really, in essence, is replacing that skills template that those Club Mark clubs put on their portal, where you had to put DBS, first aid, etc. down. What's going to happen, and Graham, myself and Arfan have got a training webinar tomorrow to learn more about it. So we don't know that much, but it's going to be a portal that clubs will be able to put in details of all the people that require DBS checks, first aid, we think first aid anyway, SPC and so on, and that will be internally monitored through the ECB systems for courses. They can check that people have done courses that the ECB have run. Now, the precursor to that is, and we're going to discuss this tomorrow at our webinar, is we will need to contact all the club marked clubs for a lead contact, and with that contact we'll need a first name, middle name if there is one, a preferred name, a last name, personal email address, and the date that the insurance for your club is renewable. The reason I mentioned the insurance is within this new Safe Hands management system, there is a free insurance worth about £300 through Howdens. We haven't got the full details, but generally speaking, it looks like it's liability insurance, so public liability, personal liability, possibly employer's liability. But that will all come out once people are in the system, once that lead contact has logged into the new system and got all the necessary information. More that will come out and we'll know more about it. I can't really say much more because, as Graham I'm sure will agree, we're pretty well in the dark about a lot of it, how exactly it's going to work. But there will be Club Mark next year. There won't be a deadline like the 31st of October for re-accreditations. We understand it's going to be just renew as and when you can on an annual basis, we think. So that should save everybody working to a deadline at the last minute. So we will communicate with those Club Mark clubs as soon as we get further information. Once successful, this Safe Hands management system, it will then be rolled out to those clubs with junior sections, and ultimately ECB wanted to get it out to the rest and the majority of cricket clubs. Whole idea is to make sure that safeguarding, which is obviously Phil's baby really, but clubs are okay, they can check their safeguarding, people can advise them if there's issues, and it's really another step to make sure that all clubs are looking after children, vulnerable people, and they have the necessary safeguarding issues in place. Did you want to expand on that at all, Phil, because it is your baby?
No, it's just that we're anticipating some training that will go around. As soon as we get some further information, we'll just send it to everybody. At the moment, it's a wait and see. There have been some pilots which apparently have been successful, and we'll just wait and see. It is the system, and clubs just need to be aware that we'll support you in whatever's needed to get us through this and make sure we're fully compliant.
Okay, well I think it's enough from me. I can't really say much more until we've had our training.
Sure. Thanks, Giles.
Okay.
I will just 2 extra points to that though. Any clubs listening that may be thinking about applying to the Premier Leagues at the end of next summer, we will talk to you about whether you need to go on this system. We won't know until we hear a bit more tomorrow. But if you are a club that is keen to do that, then we may find a way to we will have to find a way to try and get you on the system if possible. So we don't want to hold you back with an application to a Premier League on that basis. And the other area, Giles, I was just going to mention that my understanding is that a lot of this should be pre-populated centrally to save clubs having to route around for information. But again, we'll get more on that and we'll advise you as we hear it. So I will now just cover the next part, which is just really a topic that enters a lot of my work on top of the other bits that I do for you as clubs. And several clubs in the county will have experienced areas and issues with local planning and development. And that was really just why I wanted to put this on and make sure clubs were aware of it. More and more of our local authorities are being squeezed to add extra houses into their local authority. Many clubs and people sitting around on this meeting will have sat in our presentations for playing pitch strategies in their local authority, where we sat down with the consultant and talked about what was an immediate need for a club and perhaps an immediate need for that local authority, whether it was an indoor facility or just something that help the individual clubs. Our role at ECB and at Essex now is to try and make sure that as these houses are built, that any funds that are free through the 106 scheme, etc., can be sort of directed not only to cricket, it has to go to all sports and leisure, but we try and make sure we have our share. Those playing pitch strategy documents were put together by all the sports and really gave the local authority a really good steer on the projects at that time, but really warranted investment if there was funding available. They'll always go out of date, and if and when we get to hear about these funding opportunities, we would always go back to the group of clubs, or if it's specifically in one little area or one town, it might be we just go back to one particular club to say, I don't know, there's £40,000. Can we consider that project that you had on the stocks? Is it still something that's relevant? And if it was, then we would consider moving along with it. More importantly, though, and the reason I wanted to touch on it tonight was around really property developments where we don't get to know about it, but potentially give you an issue at your ground where you might suddenly find that batsmen are now hitting the ball, as they always have done, out of the ground or out of the boundary, and are now suddenly hitting a house, or something has happened that has completely changed how your ground looks. So you might be sitting there in a nice edge of a field at the moment, and all of a sudden 50 new houses go up and we don't get to know about it. Sport England will notify us of any development of 300 houses or more. Obviously that's a sizable development, but they just can't be notified about every single project below that. But it only takes one or two houses suddenly stuck on your boundary edge, and your cricket can change forever and can have quite a detrimental effect. The law's not going to protect you as it always used to, and you'll find potentially that you're going to be liable for cricket balls hitting the buildings, even worse, hitting somebody that's sitting in their back garden. So all of a sudden, a sport that's probably been played for 100 odd years at your ground is suddenly in a vulnerable position. If we get early opportunity to hear about something, particularly if you believe it's going to make a difference to your environment, please get in touch. Give me a call. I have a huge a relationship with not only Sport England, but Duncan Jenkinson at ECB. We will then work with the local authority and the builders, and if necessary, talk about putting in fencing at the right level, talk about ball striking reports, all the things that cost a lot of money. You would think, well, we'll just stick a fence up, that'll be all right. Well, who's going to take it down? Where are you going to store it every winter? Who's going to maintain, let's say, a 5-metre fence that runs right along one side of your boundary? It's a very, very expensive project. Could cost 60, 80 grand sometimes. And your club's not set up for it. You didn't ask for it. But unfortunately, on one or two occasions, we've really only found out when the houses have actually started to be built, and it puts us in a far more difficult position to go back to local authorities and say, oi, please pay up for this. This isn't fair. Whereas if we know about it in advance, we can make it part of planning regulation, but they will make sure that they comply, that they will eventually pass ownership from a housing developer to the actual local authority, who will then be responsible for it. That's the ideal scenario. It's not always going to happen, but the earlier you let us know. So again, this is just really a notification. I say I've spoken to quite a few clubs now. Many of you will be sitting there thinking, we're fine, we're surrounded by a river or whatever, nothing's going to change. If that's the case, great stuff. But just keep your ears to the ground. I've said to a lot of guys on the team, for many, many years, we've been very lucky that we're normally driving around the county with our job, and I get to see housing developments that are popping up, or one of my colleagues will mention it, and straight away I can be on the phone to one of the clubs and say, oh, have you heard anything? What do we know? And we can pick that up with a local authority. Right now, working from home, I don't have that position. So we really need you to be the ears and eyes for us. It's for your benefit, hopefully. But it's quite an interesting procedure to go through, but it's certainly a lot nicer when the boot's on our side of the foot rather than trying to catch up. So that was really all I wanted to touch on that, Graham. I don't think there's anything else. And obviously, housing developments as well bring possible funding. Comes back again to what I said with 106 money. I had a club with 20 houses built in the village, and it netted about £1 million for that particular area. Not all for cricket. I mean, there was a sports, a village hall and football pitches and cricket as well. And it was only 20 houses. So don't underestimate sometimes. I know they were big houses, but just what's out there for you. So I'll pass back to Philippe.
Thanks, Pikey. And again, thanks, guys, for the effort you've been doing, and please stay in touch with them. Now, we've obviously got time for a few questions. We did say we'd keep this to sort of a 40-minute session rather than just drag on for a long time. The presentations will be available, plus we've put together some additional slides which have come in from the ECB, Duncan's information, but they're quite wordy. But they do contain a number of hyperlinks which you can get quickly through to where you want to. Just while you're thinking of any questions you might want to ask, any comments, I've put up the next 3 sessions we've got before the end of the year. Next week, I'm very keen to have any examples of best practice from any club that have got innovative ideas about working through this lockdown period, anything that worked in the last one. Any ideas coming from schools, but a general sort of sharing of information, which we will publicise. Following that, we've got Kelly Castle and Danny Warren from Sunrisers joining that, and we'll be looking at elite female cricket, but there'll be an opportunity to ask as many questions as you like about girls and women's development. The final one of the year will be some prevent training with Jill Bartlett from Metropolitan Police, and she will take us all through some of the issues we need to be aware of if we're running clubs, to make sure that we don't get outside influences trying to indoctrinate ourselves, but obviously particularly the young people. We have got a fairly small group tonight, just 15 on at the moment. So if anybody's got any questions, it will work quite well. By all means, come in with your microphone, just unmute yourself. Any comments, questions, any thoughts that you've got for the future. We're joined by Lewis Denmark. Thank you for joining us, Lewis, tonight from Norfolk Cricket Board. Hopefully this will be the first of many successful sessions which we try and make sure that the whole of cricket in the Eastern region gets access to whatever information we can to support you. So any questions? Anybody in the chat box? Any comments you've got?
I think Graham mentioned he was going to talk about getting the return to cricket money. I just wondered, what the process was. We put in the application form. I just wondered about the timing, etc.
Oh, right. I'm surprised you've not heard. That was a while ago now, David, wasn't it?
Well, that's right. Yes, we haven't heard anything. So,
okay, I'll take that one offline, David. But okay. I'll follow it through, because unless you've missed something off, and I can't remember without looking at it, you should have heard. But I'll send Duncan and copy you into an email tomorrow, and we'll just follow that up. All right. Sorry about that.
No,
the offer letter. Have you checked your junk mail or spam mail, David? Because sometimes the offer letter goes in there.
Well, I'll check it again, but I've been looking pretty regularly.
Okay.
Keep you on tenterhooks. We'll find it.
Good. Anybody else like to come in? Either the chat box, questions. As I say, if you have got any thoughts about future sessions, by all means, just send an email to any of the Essex Cricket staff, and we'll make sure we follow up on that. Any other thoughts? We have got about 8 minutes, as we said. As I said, I will just, whilst people are composing their thoughts, I'm not going to read these PowerPoints out, but just to give you an illustration of the sort of information that's on the list that the ECB Duncan has put together. He's put the idea of the Return to Cricket Grant Scheme, how the clubs apply, obviously some hyperlinks in there, the Emergency Loan Scheme for clubs and leagues, again, how they apply for that, and the interest-free loan schemes, they're all there. So if you want to get that further information, please, we'll send some details out with the follow-up this, which will be the recording. If there's anything that any of the guys said that you want to pick up on, or those additional slides from, Prikey or Giles, do you want to comment on that?
Just one thing, Phil. The Return to Cricket grant has been extended now to the 15th of January. So there's another 2 or 3 weeks after Christmas, if I'm allowed to say that word.
Oh, you find the staff fighting for that?
No, definitely not.
Oh, we'll see about that. We have a sweepstake in the office about naming a certain word just before the end of the new year. So I think Giles has just cost himself 50p on that one. Robert, do you want to come in with something?
If you wouldn't mind.
Yes, of course.
Last couple of days, we've been trying to do a lot of DBS checks, and it appears that the system has been ceased. What do we do about?
Right. Well, that's one I can answer, Robert. And the website, the Essex Cricket website, community safeguarding is up to date. And what I've said is that I've dedicated 3 times on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. All the details on the website. Effectively speaking, we're now going back to the online verification. By all means, if anybody needs to be verified, email me through any of the websites. Then we will. It takes about 2 minutes just to verify their details. We just need to make sure that, first of all, that we get them started. As I say, any queries, it works effectively. Just send me an email and we can quickly cover it up. Graham Smith, additionally, will be able to help if people have got those contact details.
Is there any difference between people who have been accredited before and are coming new to the system?
No, the only thing that has changed over the last year or so is that once you get your DBS, you get an opportunity to log on to a thing called an automatic update service. That will mean that you'll get your DBS every 3 years, or every year sent to you, unless you decide to opt out. But it is a far more efficient and effective service these days. But again, send me an email, Robert, and I'll send you all the details and you can forward it on.